Hey all, welcome to the Impact Ladder podcast. Today we have John Patton on, a Senior VP of AI and Data Solutions at High Tide Consulting Inc. In this episode, John shares what he learned from a 12-year journey at Salesforce, starting as a solution engineer and ending his time there as a Senior Director of Solution Engineering while leading a team. John also gets into how he's approaching conversations with customers at his current company to help them uncover and adopt new cutting-edge agentic AI flows by leveraging the Salesforce ecosystem within higher education and nonprofit environments. All right, let's get into it. Hey, John, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself, career-wise. Like, what does your role look like today? What are the sorts of things that you do on a daily basis?
Today, I focus on solution design and agentic strategy for nonprofits, higher ed, and public sector. Uh, Basically, spending my day thinking about how we can make their infrastructure and their technology investments really help them accomplish their mission. Spend a lot of time thinking through what's coming out, how to use it, how to harness it, and how to do so safely with privacy and trust.
Interesting. That's that's cool. I got a lot of questions. I actually, before I got into tech, I used to work in the social services, so I'd be curious to kind of hear how things plug in at that level, just being somebody who's kind of been in the trenches on that side of things with the databases and the case notes and all that. But yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. Now, okay, so before we kind of just chat about it, what does revenue, like not revenue impact, I guess, but like business outcome impact look like if you're doing a good job with your clients or
Yeah, that's a
customers?
great question. So, I mean, everything we do, we try to ground in return on investment or return on impact, right?
Mm,
And so, when you're working with a nonprofit, they exist to accomplish their mission and deliver that impact. So, for us, it's a function of what are we building and how does that enhance their impact? How does it allow them to act like an amplifier and do even more with the funds and the resources that they have? We aren't going to do a project that is really cool piece of technology, really fancy interface, but actually doesn't help them deliver more tangible impact
mm,
and achieve their mission. So for us, that's always front and center. um, uh, for a higher ed institution, those are a little bit more fragmented, so
mm,
sometimes you're working with admission and it's a little bit easier math. You're like, how many students applied, how many were accepted, how many
mm,
matriculated, right? So that those funnels are a little bit easier to measure than like nebulous impact sometimes.
mm,
But yeah, we definitely always are focusing on making sure that there's that outcome at the end of a project that
mm.
delivers real value.
Gotcha. Awesome. I definitely can relate to that. Yeah, if it's kind of a fuzzy goal or more mission oriented, sometimes there's less measurable outcomes and it's just kind of comes with the territory. And yeah, that's cool that you're thinking about that both ways. Now, if we kind of go back in time a little bit, how did you get to where you're at today? Because if you told somebody maybe 5 years ago what your title was, they'd be like, I don't understand what that is. What's agentic? Like all that, right? But I'm super curious to kind of hear a bit about your trajectory. Like what happened? What are the steps you took? What did maybe progression look like to get you sitting in this current seat that you're in right now?
Yeah. Well, I think there's kind of two driving forces for me in my career. One is kind of the progression of my career through the corporate ladder, that kind of thing, and then the other is kind of my overarching desire to be connected to something bigger and larger than just maximizing shareholder value, which in and of
Mm,
itself isn't a bad thing, but it isn't the only thing that matters.
mm,
So for me, I always wanted to work in a place where I felt like I could make a difference and deliver impact. And nonprofits are profoundly underserved in
mm,
terms of innovation and really thoughtful approaches. Usually, you kind of get the not the best and the brightest in terms of the partners that want to work with nonprofits, which is a bummer. And
mm,
so you end up with a lot of consultants who have fundraising strategies from 1975 and haven't updated them since, right?
mm,
Who charge lots of money. And so what if we actually could be like really helpful, really innovative, really thoughtful, and help this underserved market? So that's always been like a personal ethos. And, my entry into that was actually starting a nonprofit myself. It was called Forgo. And the idea was that I would go to these, paddle raise dinners on the weekends occasionally, and they tell a beautiful story, and, maybe even get a little waterworks going. And they're like, do the paddle raise. And you're like, yeah, I care about this. And you raise your paddle. And then I found myself, 4 or 5 days later, not thinking about it at all. Like, just I had moved on from that moment. And so some buddies and I thought, well, what if we lived in a way that what we actually said we cared about and what stirred us to give was just a part of our everyday life? And so we developed an application where you would get reminded, like on Tuesday, hey, why don't you forego a cup of coffee and give the money you would have spent to that cause you said you cared about, right? So that was like how I got into like the nonprofit space. And then the more traditional corporate career ladder was I got connected to Salesforce early on, actually through Radian 6 acquisition, which was a social media monitoring platform that was built in Flash. That's how old it
Oh,
is, and that's
wow.
how old I am. Back in the days where people would tell you, every time you build something in Flash, an angel loses their wings. And so it was built on Flash, and it was, at the time it was really cool, great people, but it got acquired by Salesforce. And so right as that was happening, I got put into a role at Salesforce. And I was in sales, but what I really liked doing was demonstrating and connecting the stories of how the product could serve my clients. I really enjoyed that part of it much more than the actual like contracting and all of that. So a job opened up at Salesforce Foundation at the time, which it became salesforce.org, for an SE to actually do that. And so I came in and was an SE at Salesforce Foundation in 2012, was it? Something like that. And then I literally just worked my way up the ladder. Every couple of years, I had a new opportunity and a new title until I got to Senior Director of Solution Engineering and Strategic Engagements. So I worked my way up and then left that space and went over to the consulting world. The kind of the joke is like Salesforce SEs, we get to make the promises, and then the actual implementers, where I'm at, consulting implementers, actually get to cash the checks and deliver the promises. So I
Right.
thought I've made a lot of promises. I want to make sure I have the experience of delivering on those promises too. And
Okay.
that's how I made my way over to where I'm at.
Awesome. I love that. That's really neat that one, you've had that through line of just nonprofit. You've kind of touched it in different ways at this point. And then also seeing both sides from like I guess the Salesforce side of things in that sector. That's really cool. Are there, this might be too in the weeds, but I'm curious, are there any things that maybe how do I word this? Maybe people who buy into Salesforce struggle with on the implementation side. Like maybe they think like a non-technical admin can handle it, but they really need somebody with more technical skills.
Yeah, oh, for sure. There are things that people struggle with. I think you raised one right there. I think the idea of could and should, the old Jurassic Park Jeff Goldblum situations, like just because you could doesn't mean you should, right? Like that's also true of Salesforce. Just because you could build it in Salesforce or build this complex workflow or this complex logic doesn't mean you should. Um, I am a firm believer in using the out of the box capabilities as much as possible and then customizing on the base versus like, trying to build something totally artisanal from scratch, never before seen. It can do that, but you get a lot more success when you leverage the, billions of dollars of developers that Salesforce has and how they've built the structure and then build on top of that base. So that's definitely one. But I will say, today there's always a knowledge gap that had to be bridged historically. Like, how do I do this? How do I troubleshoot that? How do I build this? And with the tools that are at our fingertips today, the knowledge gap is like closed. So as long as you know how to prompt, You can
Mm,
pretty much figure it out at this point.
interesting. Yeah, I imagine that is impacting kind of the solutions world positively and negatively, where maybe people are coming forward with more complex things that they can maybe handle until that person who's like super ambitious about AI leaves. And then that organization is stuck with that thing, whereas like the out of the box implementation could have been fine.
That's right. Someone else would be able to pick that up and figure out where you are a
Mm,
lot faster. Yeah, that's right. If your team member who is doing the development or administration is not leveraging it to document what they're doing, you're doing it wrong. It's
mm.
that's officially incorrect at this point. And there should be a breadcrumb trail for everything that's being done, that you'd be able to unwind and come back to in a heartbeat if you needed to.
Awesome. I love that. Now, so with your journey, so it sounds like like you were involved in this monitoring software, social media monitoring, and then you went through that acquisition, you got exposed to Salesforce, new opportunities, that sort of thing. You're in that nonprofit track. It sounds like from what you said, you had passion there, you felt that there was purpose there. You had the experience from like your own startup, all that kind of lines up. Now, as you progressed, right? Because what was your, I think it was like Director of Solutions Engineering was your final title at Salesforce?
Yeah, senior director of solution engineering.
Okay, yeah. So I imagine there's like a huge chunk of just learning, personal growth, like hard-won battles, like in that from, okay, you start there and then you're leaving there, right? Now, what, like, was there a specific moment where you maybe realize like or like the business impact aspect clicked for you like you specifically called out one thing that piqued my interest where you said storytelling is important and that like is that maybe something that clicked for you early on where you're like oh I got to be able to tell these stories in a way that non-technical people can understand or like what did that look for like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, people don't understand, you hear engineering in the title and you think like developer, and a lot of people have that preconceived notion, and understandably so. But solution engineering is far more about like configuration of a platform or configuration of a solution and designing a solution than it is about actually developing.
Hmm.
And so, there's three pillars of solution engineering, at least in when I was running those teams, there were three pillars, and maybe more now, I don't know. But and it was like technical aptitude, technical competence, like do you understand technology? Because that is really important, and people can smell it 1,000 miles away if you don't. Then there is like, deep product expertise, right? So technical aptitude, product expertise. Do you understand your product? Do you understand how it works, the use cases? And then that third one is presentation storytelling, right? And
Hmm.
what we'd often find is you get really technical people who were developers who were trying to become SEs, and they could explain the platform and why these decisions were made, but they couldn't translate that into the language of the nonprofits so that they could actually envision how they would use the technology to accomplish their mission.
Hmm.
So we'd have a lot of times where you'd have people have like kind of one or two of the three pillars, and you really need all three.
Hmm.
One of my favorite things to coach SEs on is like sometimes the right answer is yes,
Hmm.
right? Some or no, but like people will ask some sort of feature function question like, "Hey, can I set permissions at the role level?" And like, for the and the SE who's done all this work to learn the product is like, "This is my chance." Like, "Hey, mom, we're ready. Like we've prepared for this moment." And they're like, "I'm going to show you how to get to the menu and click and click and click and click and click." And it's like, actually, that's the wrong answer. The right answer was, yeah, it can do that. And
Hmm.
then going on, right? Because like they trust you that you're telling the truth. So for me, like this whole world of solution engineering is like you have to be able to intuit what's going on in the room, communicate effectively, and have that technical aptitude and product knowledge. If you don't have all three, you're going to struggle.
Yeah, interesting. That trust factor is interesting, and I think virtually, like I know, like the solutions sales engineering isn't like a traditional sales role, but like I think in sales in general, like you kind of need to earn the client's trust or the customer's trust, and then assume it's there and kind of build on top of it. That's how do you like how would you back then, or maybe even today, like build that trust whenever maybe something is like a prospect's handed off to you and you're picking it up from somebody who sent you that, like maybe they're the one who generated the lead or has built it up to a certain point where now like you need to look at the technical details. Like, are you going in or were you going in and kind of like gauging the temperature? Is it just like an assumption and it's like if they don't trust you at that point, it's just not a qualified lead and you kind of let it like go away? Like, can you talk to that?
Yeah, I think we had a whole methodology around how we did this
Mm,
that we developed at Salesforce for or the nonprofit practice anyway.
mm,
And our whole concept was that we try not to make the customer repeat themselves, right? And so it's like if you've said something to one of us, you've said it to all of us, whether that's the sales team, the sales leader, the SE leader. It's like we are going to share information internally. And so the first step to building trust for me was always recapping what we knew so far, right?
mm,
Because there's nothing worse than a customer like explaining everything in great detail about what they need. And like, okay, great, I'm going to book you a call with, and then you get on the call and you're like, okay, so what are you trying to accomplish? And they're like, are you kidding me? Are
mm,
you kidding? I just spent an hour explaining this to someone.
mm.
So I started building trust right away. And I would usually say something like, look, I'm probably 85% correct here. But what I understand your situation to be is, and then I would recap what we had heard and what we had learned. And I had done it so many times that I kind of had the poetry of language to put it in maybe even clearer terms than they had given it to us. So
Mm,
I'd synthesized it into like maybe 4 key pillars or something like that. So they could see that I had worked with the information they had given and synthesized it into something really meaningful for them.
mm,
And then I would read that back to them. And then I would say, please fix what I got wrong.
mm,
And sometimes they did fix it. And other times they're like, no, you got it right.
mm,
Either way, we're already off to the races that I'm here to understand them and solve their problems, not to just pitch slap them a product like pitch, pitch,
mm.
pitch.
I love that. Yeah, logically, that makes a ton of sense. It shows that you did the footwork ahead of time. You're not just showing up being like, "Hey, I'm John. Tell me your story," right? It's like, okay, you've been engaged with whoever, like this is what we know. Fill in the holes here. Like, did something not enter into the system that I should be knowing? Like all that stuff. That's really cool. Now, so today, I know your role looks a little different, still working kind of in a similar ecosystem, still on the sales side, Salesforce aspect, not necessarily on the Salesforce side of things, but more implementation and then still nonprofits. Are there specific like types of nonprofits that you guys work with specifically? Like, are you looking at people who are like, do they have like actual revenue outcomes? Are they actual, like, is it funding? Like you're just looking to get more people in the door? Is it like, are you like implementing programs to, I don't know, like build community engagement? Like, are there certain like trends there that you guys are kind of most equipped to deal with?
Yeah, great question. So I think everyone's like, oh no, we do everything. And I think there's some degree of like we have a portfolio of projects that spans a lot of different use cases. So
Mhm.
there is that. What I would tell you though is that there are projects that I think we are really good fits for.
Mhm.
Um, I would say anything related to fundraising, we are absolutely world class at that,
Mhm.
and moves management. And it's not because I'm so smart or anything like that. It's really because we've kind of reorchestrated how we go to market in those areas,
Mhm.
designed to leverage your data and your infrastructure and get to outcomes really, really quickly.
Mhm.
So, 5 years ago, if you had, your data infrastructure across, your Azure, your, Salesforce, maybe some old like Blackbaud tools, or maybe like, old community portal or something. They have all of these different tools over here. And I'm like, all right, Andrew exists in all of these tools. So
Mm,
like, you're going to meet with Andrew. What do you want to tell him? You'd be like, I mean, I have to look in every place and then try to like guess what
mm,
is right here or what to do or what to ask. Well,
mm,
that whole like collection and interpretation and recommendation,
mm,
that is like, if as long as you know how to do this, and that's not everyone does, but
mm,
if you know how to do this, you can actually build out, skip all that and go straight to the here's what you should say to Andrew, right?
mm,
Like, so we have a methodology around fundraising, which is absolutely best of breed. And that's something where we excel. We do a lot with program management as well, building custom programs.
mm,
And where I think we excel is um, leveraging your data to get predictive.
mm,
So, I'll give you an example. If you are a homeless shelter and you also have a food bank and you also have job placement programs, if someone comes in for food, right, they may or may not also need shelter. If
mm,
someone comes in for shelter, they may or may not also need job placement,
mm,
right? But if I take a little bit of, just take a moment up front and ask
mm,
the questions about what other services they might need,
mm,
if I do that up front, I can shorten the time it takes for them to get self-sufficient and back on their feet by
mm,
addressing not just the momentary need, but the likely future needs as well, right?
mm,
So I build one application for them. I send it to all three programs. They start running that process and we track that person over time and we can shorten the amount of time it takes to get them housed, in a good
mm,
job, fed, right? Because we're doing it all at once really thoughtfully.
mm,
And I will tell you, the traditional world of solution implementation and building out these solutions, there's really no incentive to do that
mm,
because you would get to build three custom programs end to end and you get to build a lot more hours. But
mm,
in our world, it's like we know we're not running out of problems to solve for
mm,
nonprofits. There's a long list of problems to solve. So if we can solve three or four at a time more efficiently,
mm,
we don't view that as encroaching on our potential benefit and revenue. We view that as just the right thing to do for nonprofits.
mm,
So I think programs, fundraising, we have some really innovative approaches to building out like missional dashboards
mm,
and being able to track your success metrics all in one location, regardless of where those are housed. I
mm,
just think we have a lot of stuff in that space, which is best of breed. There are
mm,
projects though that we're probably not the right fit for. Like if you need you know, six people to do staff aug and like document ingestion or something like that, full-time heads to do that. Yeah, it's probably not a good fit for us. You're going to want to go to one of the really big consulting firms to do that.
mm. Gotcha. That's neat. Yeah, I think things are easier in general in life and in business whenever you kind of know your lane and you stay in your lane and you can recognize when other people are in your lane. And it just simplifies a lot of things. And it sounds like from what I'm hearing that you know that lane. I'd be curious, this is maybe boring to some people, but super interesting to me. Like, what does an agentic solution look like in maybe a fundraising scenario? Like, what types of things can you bring to a nonprofit that they would look at and be like, oh, that's helpful. We see that like on our profit and loss.
Yeah. So I have to somewhat shield my answer here in terms of like our secret sauce
For sure.
because we have a really well considered approach here, which yields tremendous results. But what I do feel very comfortable sharing is that there is a massive shift from seeing to knowing. And what I mean by that is historically, when you looked at some sort of fundraising tool,
Mm,
the goal was to be able to see everything in one place, right? So I see you, I see your giving history, I see your volunteer history, I see who's in your household, I see that you attended our banquet, I see that you bid on a toaster at our bank or whatever. Like, and I suddenly I see you've been to our website, I see what emails you've opened, I see that you get text message updates, you're subscribed to our newsletter. I like
Mhm.
all these things about you. And I look at it and I pull up your record and I can see it all.
Mhm.
And that was Camelot for forever, right?
Mhm.
It's like, I can see everything. But the problem is it's still on me looking at your record to know what to do with all that information. Like
Mhm.
what's actually actionable. And the
Mhm.
problem is that if I have thousands of constituents, right, everyone's going to have a slightly different amount of their profile filled in with slightly different things. And so it's
Mhm.
really hard to develop a methodology around what you should actually do with all that information that you have,
Mhm.
right? So the shift is from seeing everything to knowing what to do.
Mhm.
And knowing what to do leverages an agentic solution
Mhm.
where it looks at all of the data and it separates the signals from the noise and it
Mhm.
just targets the signals and it says based on the signals about Andrew, here's what you should do next,
Mhm.
right? And it's evidence-based, data-driven recommendations on what you should do next with Andrew. And if
Mhm.
it doesn't work, guess what? That actually informs the model. So
Mhm.
it's perpetually improving the more you're taking its recommendations and actioning those recommendations.
Mhm.
So the model gets better over time and is already better than it would have been for me seeing everything on that single pane of glass,
Mhm.
that single pane of glass,
Mhm.
right? That is it's so different than what
Mhm.
we could have done even a year ago in fundraising. So uh, I can't necessarily articulate how we do all of that
Mhm.
because we got some pretty, I think, phenomenal secret sauce in there.
Mhm.
But I will share that that is it, right? The idea of going from seeing to just knowing what to do. That's the secret.
Mhm. I love that. Yeah. So it sounds like the opportunities are being surfaced, but then also that plan is being surfaced with it. And that's powerful. I can definitely see how that would have impact, right? At the end of the day. Plus it means that more highly impactful decisions can be made and less of the administrative stuff, which is still really important. But yeah, like kind of handling that sort of stuff programmatically, that's really cool. I like that a lot.
Well, and if you kind of like go down the rabbit trail with me here for a moment, the next thing is like do it for me.
Mm,
Not just knowing what to do, but now do it for me,
mm,
right? And so, hey, this person needs to get invited to this event. Okay, invite them to that event,
mm.
right? Okay, they've been
Wow,
invited. You're like, okay, great, perfect.
that's very cool. And
That
then
allows me.
oh, sorry, go ahead, John.
I'll say that allows me, if I'm in the fundraising department, to
Mm,
focus on where my highest value activity is, which is making a human connection with that person,
mm,
right? Like my highest value is not sending them an invite to our banquet, right? My highest value is meeting them at the banquet and having a conversation and really understanding what drives them, right? To want to participate financially.
mm.
That's that's hard to AI, right? The human connection can't AI that. So let's let AI do what it does and let's let people be people.
I love that. So yeah, so it sounds like from what I'm hearing, maybe I misunderstood it a little bit, but almost like that conversational aspect where like the AI is like, or the system surfacing things, and then yeah, you're actually engaging with it and pushing things forward in that manner.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe the recommendation is give them a phone call. And in that
Mm,
case, you're not going to have AI call them for you, right? But
right.
but if it's something tactical like make sure they get included on the invite list as we
Mm,
send out this massive mail invite, like that's not a high value activity to add them to the list for a person to do. The system should be able to do that on your behalf,
mm,
right? So that's it. Like you got to have those like who does what, when, how, and why rules for
mm,
AI, and that's a whole separate conversation. But yeah, absolutely. Once you know what to do, making sure you know what the best way to execute on that and take all the busy work out of someone's day whenever possible.
I love that a lot. That's yeah, that's powerful. Now, so this might be going back in time a little bit. It will for sure be going back in time. But whenever you made the shift, I imagine, I'm guessing here, I imagine the shift maybe happened whenever you went from like the social media monitoring into Salesforce. Like, what changed in your life or your attitude or your approach in general whenever you realized that, oh, I need to now influence revenue, I need to influence impact and real outcomes?
Yeah. Yeah, I think when you go from being responsible for yourself to being responsible for a line of business, that is different. And that's exactly what I did.
Mm,
So when you're in charge of hiring and ramping up, that's a different thing altogether. Um, I I am fortunate that I had very good models of leadership to follow.
mm,
Uh, I had a boss at the time who was just really a phenomenal leader,
mm,
and so it was he was authentic, gave bad news quickly, I always would say you don't spit on my foot and tell me it's raining, right? And like he wouldn't do that. So if there was bad news to share, he wouldn't
mm,
just like toe the company line and pretend it was good news. He'd be like, no, this is a tough one, but we're going to get through it, right?
mm,
And so I felt fully free to be real and honest with my team the whole time.
mm,
Um, and I think that was a really big deal. And then
mm,
it allowed me to build trust with my team in a way that like I could tell them what I needed to have happen. Like, hey, I need it to look like this. I need us to log this. I need us to do these things. And even
mm,
if those tasks weren't fun in and of themselves, they would do them because they understood the why behind what needed to get done.
mm,
So I think for me, uh, you know, hiring people, building a team, building a culture of the team came very naturally because I was able to just kind of copy what was done ahead of me,
mm.
and put my own tweak on it. I'm a lot funnier than my boss was. His name was Travis. If he listens to this, I'm a lot funnier than he ever was. And so, what he did plus humor down the way.
Mm,
The other piece which was interesting and the one-off experience I had, which I think is germane to this, is at the same time my colleague was a sales leader who kind of just went out for personal reasons,
mm,
and so I then kind of got to look over a lot of the sales that were happening as well and do things like pipeline updates and forecasting updates and kind of
mm,
run. They didn't report to me, but they kind of dotted line into me. I was the highest leader in that whole division,
mm,
and so I got the experience of actually trying to like work through enablement and go to market and all of that with a sales team, not just a solution engineering team. And
mm,
I will tell you that is among the hardest I've had to work in my career, to kind of span both of those and do it in a way that was authentic, do it in a way that like was removing blockers from people beneath me so that they could thrive. My
mm,
goal wasn't for me to thrive. My
mm,
goal was to make sure the people that I was responsible for were thriving, and that's different. And I will tell you that I don't think I could work in an environment where the leader wasn't focused on helping his team be successful
mm,
or focused on helping her team thrive.
mm,
Uh, but I unfortunately, when you kind of look out in the ecosystem in the marketplace today, you see a lot of people that are focused on their own personal thriving and their own personal success and really don't care about their team.
mm. And that's a really interesting perspective, and I definitely resonate with that. I've had a similar trajectory where I've lucked out with my prior bosses, and everybody's always been like had that mentorship mindset where it's like you can tell they not only do they care, but they're like, here's what worked for me, or here's how you can handle that, and here's how you can kind of keep pushing forward. So that is really cool. I like that. Now, how is AI changing the way you work or kind of like the way your role might be defined?
Oh man, how much time you got? The AI has upended almost every industry
Hmm,
except for the industry that I'm in. It feels
hmm,
like I feel like it's like we've always made typewriters. We'll continue to make typewriters. I don't think this computer thing is going to catch on. Like, I
Mm,
really feel like that's kind of like the attitude in the industry I'm in right now, especially working with the firms that work with nonprofits.
mm,
Um, and so, I'm in this really interesting situation where I'm trying to figure out how to do things cheaper and faster. I'm not
mm,
trying to figure out how to leverage AI to charge my customers more.
mm,
And that is like just a totally different thought than other firms in the space. And so for me, I look at this as like, we have like I said earlier, nonprofits are not going to run out of problems to solve. They aren't. So if we can use AI to be way more efficient with how we deliver impact, how we group and solve multiple problems at once, how we deliver, uh, boy, oh boy, can we make a huge impact and a huge difference. And I'll give you one example. I always think, they say, drink your own champagne now instead of eat your own dog food. It's much nicer. So how do we drink our own champagne? We of course use Salesforce, right? You can imagine we're a
mm,
Salesforce partner. Uh, I don't log anything in Salesforce anymore. I don't have
mm.
to,
Wow.
because AI looks at my calendar, looks at my notes, and then uses natural language processing to unpack my transcriptions, my notes, looks at my calendar, looks at our instance of Salesforce, and logs it all for me automatically. So my
Mm,
Salesforce is more up to date than
mm,
it's ever been,
mm,
with more information and more notes and no effort on my part whatsoever to keep it
mm,
up to date. So, like, that's the kind of stuff that really moves the needle, right? So our clients that we work with that are doing program management, you're like, hey, hit the record button here on your laptop and then just talk to the person,
mm,
right? We'll index everything. We'll make sure the records get to the right place in your program management.
mm,
We'll create the new case. We'll do all of that stuff that you would have had to click through and do historically.
mm,
All you need to do is make sure that your conversation is being recorded and that you're
mm,
describing what's happening to some extent, right? Like, I think of it like the surgeon. It's like, all right, we are opening up the patient. Like,
mm,
they describe what they're about to do, right?
mm,
Like, as long as you're doing that, yeah, we can really remove a lot of the barrier and the manual work to using enterprise technology.
mm.
So it's greatly changing our world on the daily.
That's really cool. And yeah, I can definitely see a future where that just becomes the norm. And it'll be interesting to see which sectors adopt it the fastest. And I almost feel like it's going to be like the heavy technical ones. Like we're already seeing that, like the big tech companies, like it's their world, right? Like they absolutely can dive deep. But I do feel like the nonprofit sector is also kind of ready for adoption. Like it's going to take probably longer to get like saturation because it's filled with kind of non-technical folks. But the amount of value that AI brings, like if a frontline social worker gets this like double the amount of high impact meetings they're doing because they're automating this stuff, like that's genuine impact on humanity. Like that is like,
Yes,
yeah, that is just like textbook impact.
100%. And so the question is, in what you're doing today, what are the duplicative or high friction or difficult parts of what you're doing today?
Mm,
And then how can we reduce the friction, make it non-duplicative or make it less difficult,
mm,
right? How can we do that for you? And the answer historically in a lot of cases would have been some sort of like massive custom application that, was like, all right, we're going to build this thing for 18 months and then there's going to be 6 months of training. And it's like,
mm,
now that it's like, actually, I think we can build this in like 6 weeks and
mm,
can leverage the infrastructure you already have. And
mm,
what do you want it to look and feel like? And, like, all this stuff is so much more possible today than it ever has been.
mm,
Um, and we measure like hours given back is one of our most common metrics that we use.
mm,
And so, so to your point, it's like, okay, if you in an 8 hour day, if you have 4 hours of conversations and 4 hours of admin and maintenance, if
Mm.
I can cut your admin and maintenance down to 2 hours, you now can have 6 hours of conversation, right?
Mm.
That's 50% more meaningful conversations you can have.
Mm.
Okay, that's a really big deal. Like that's a really big deal, and it scales across all of the social workers, right? So, that's what I care about. That's what I want to talk about. The fringe, like agentic, like, oh look, this thing's really cool, or it can help me answer my homework. That's all fun.
Mm.
But there's real meaningful ways that AI can help you achieve your mission and your impact, and it's not about everything you're doing today is wrong,
Mm.
because we hear that a lot, like everything you're doing is wrong, you need to reimagine it all through AI. It's
Mm.
actually much more like, actually what you're doing is probably very, very good, and how can
Mm.
we make it more efficient?
Yeah, I love that. And there's definitely one thing I see, like I see that what you just described. I also see people like actively not adopting it because of this message that's just been kind of like piped into the world of like, oh, we're going to replace everyone
Place.
with AI, right? And it's like, okay, well, maybe I'm not so motivated to contribute to that, right? And it feels like now, at least from my perspective as a technical person, it's like I've kind of seen the dust settle. It feels like we're kind of getting through kind of the first or maybe second hype cycle. And we're seeing like where the real use cases are, like you're describing, and it's that augmentation. It's not,
Yeah.
it fundamentally changes literally everything. Like if it, in my opinion, if AI hasn't impacted your role, like you're gonna lose against the person who's using AI, right? And it's just a reality. It's here to stay. It's not something that's like, even if like the AI bubble, quote unquote, pops, it's still sticking around, similar to the dot-com bubble, right? That popped. The internet's still one of the most important inventions in the world, right? And so that's really, really cool to hear how that technology can be applied in such a meaningful area of the world, right? And one thing, just in case there is somebody who maybe they work at a nonprofit or maybe they know somebody who works at a nonprofit, like who should be reaching out to you about this stuff? Like is it somebody who's on the technical team? Is it the marketing team? And is it people who are already using Salesforce? Or what if they're on like another CRM? Like would they have to migrate?
Well, I think, if you're a nonprofit, higher ed, or public sector, I seriously doubt you're going to give me a scenario I haven't run across multiple times and we haven't built before. So I do want to cast a wide net there. Like, I think we really can be helpful. And I
Mm.
think just the way we approach it is so different than others in
Mm.
this space. Our goal is not to lock you in for 18 months and do some beast of a project. Like, we're really happy to give advice, create like really quick wins, and create value like rapidly. Like, that's our focus, and we can do that because we're like a niche consulting firm that's highly specialized, right? This is what we do.
Mm.
I don't have 75 people sitting on the bench where I'm like, I got to figure out how to get them in this project, you know. So I think, that would be my wide net. Is anyone in that space? We definitely have probably run into your use case before. um, but I also would say, you said something earlier about people worried about being replaced, and I think you're really onto something there. The number of jobs for like software developers has gone up, not
Mm.
down, and it's not necessarily because we need people to develop software,
Mm.
right? But it's because you know how to deploy code, and you
Mm.
know how to like manage code repositories, and like,
Mm.
so there is a like, okay, like I probably am not gonna hire someone who knows how to write HTML code to build my website anymore. Like, yeah, that
Mm.
crap's over.
Mm.
But I definitely want someone who knows how to modernly, in a modern way, deploy my HTML content across my web properties in a way that's got really well considered, like protection against the, like there's a whole entire different industry that comes out of this, which is when you have all this stuff being generated and written, how do you manage it successfully and securely?
Mm.
Um, because if your CMO is writing code, like, that's like actually a little bit scary, right? Like, we
Mm.
need to make sure there's guardrails. And so I would say, you think of the AI as not a replacement, oh gosh, I need a more mature analogy than this. And so apologies for the juvenile analogy forthcoming. But I think of it like Tony Stark in Iron Man. It's like
Mm,
AI is the Iron Man suit. It's still Tony Stark in there making decisions. It's just that he can lift a really big boulder with the suit on where he couldn't lift it without the suit, right? But you still need a person in there making decisions and executing.
mm,
Because, if you lose the human in the loop, you start, getting this kind of AI slop, not
mm,
really well considered. And if you're going to be dealing with people in moments of crisis, like we can't have it where it isn't human
mm,
and there's no human connection. It won't work, right? It doesn't
mm,
scale. There's a reason why when you pick up a suicide hotline phone, there's a person who answers and not like an algorithmic robot, right?
mm,
There's a reason there's a human there. And so we don't lose the humanity at all, but we do think about augmenting. So if you're in a space where you've got high friction processes that are painful, you're like, this should be easier. You're right. It should be easier. Give me a call. We'll help you figure out how. If you're in that higher ed, nonprofit, public sector space, then
mm.
we're potentially good.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome, John. I love that. There's just so much ground for you guys to cover. There's so many solutions that need implemented. That's really cool. Okay, so now as we start to wind down, what is one challenging period in your career that ultimately made you better?
Ooh. I've had multiple challenging periods in my career. I think the one I referenced earlier about kind of covering for the head of sales who was out was definitely one. I've also worked at places where the the there was no operational layer. It
Mm,
was just like someone would dictate and say like, we're going to do this and like, or this is going to solve all our problems. And then there was no like follow through.
mm,
And I have this real challenge of not feeling good about like not a no follow through, right? That's a personal problem for me. If someone says something and then they don't actually follow through on it,
mm,
that creates tension for me because I just kind of expect people to do what they're supposed to do, right? Like
mm,
I do it, you should do it too. And so I think, I've been in places where people are constantly changing the direction so rapidly that you can never really progress. It's really hard to, drive the boat if you don't know what star you're pointed at.
mm,
So I think that's I've had that in my career. I've also had it where I had some people on my team go through really difficult personal situations,
mm,
and then the balance of empathy and professionalism, I think, is always it's a delicate balance, it's a tightrope.
mm.
So yeah, those are some that I've had that are really tough.
That's interesting and yeah, super insightful. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, final question, and then I'll let you go. What is one like resource or even just like thing, right? It could just be mentorship, like you alluded to earlier, but like, what is something like maybe it's a book, a podcast, a course, something you'd recommend to someone trying to kind of break into your line of work?
Ooh. Um, in my line of work today, um, I would I would recommend you actually just go out there and get your hands dirty
Mm,
in different platforms and different tools.
mm,
Um, I mean, I what's available to you today is like nothing I've ever seen or heard in my entire life.
mm,
This realization that no matter how much I know, I'm always going to be an idiot compared to OpenAI, right? Like it doesn't matter how smart I think I am, I'm so dumb compared to what it already knows,
mm,
right? And so this humility of like, look, you're not going to become a master at anything more than OpenAI or Claude
mm,
already is.
mm,
So get in there, try it out,
mm,
ask it like, hey, tell it to be really critical. Like,
mm,
what did I do wrong? What should I have asked you to do that you didn't do? What am I missing? Right.
mm,
And just get your hands on it. If you wanted to get into like the SE line of work,
mm,
which is like a little bit, I'm a little less in that side, but there's some really phenomenal resources out there that I always refer people to. One of them is called the Pre-Sales Collective.
mm,
And so if you Google pre-sales collective, yeah, you'll see that. there. They have really great resources. There's also I often recommend technical people who don't know storytelling or don't know how to connect with customers, just do a Toastmasters. I know
Mm,
that sounds crazy, but like if someone comes to me and they're really technical and they're like, but I know you're worried about my ability to tell the story. So here's my Toastmaster certificate. I'm gonna feel like, oh great, you saw your gap, and you filled
mhm,
your you filled the gap. You're gonna be great. So yeah, definitely do something to show that you're really good at presenting and speaking. There's
mm,
also a phenomenal organization called Demo to Win,
mm,
which works with people building out impactful presentations
mm,
using like core communication principles. If you were a communication major, you know the core principles, like I was in my undergrad. So like they use those core principles and they kind of transform that into a corporate environment for product selling.
mm.
So pre-sales collective, demo to win, Toastmasters, and if you're trying to get in my line of work right now, which is like compiling solutions and building custom solutions, like get your hands in Claude Code, get your
Mm.
hands in Codex, like get going. It's unbelievable what's available to you today.
Mm, awesome. That's great advice, John. I really appreciate that. Now, we'll put your LinkedIn link in the show notes if anybody wants to reach out to you. And
Right?
yeah, thanks so much for just so openly sharing all the information with us today. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was great chatting with you.